Chances are you're going to see and hear a lot of blues licks and John Mayer riffs when you check out demos for this new Origin Effects Halcyon Blue, and I think rightfully so. But today we're going to talk about why I love the Bluesbreaker circuit and why I think it, and specifically this new guy from Origin Effects, works really well for a lot of sounds and genres beyond just that. But first, let's check this out. Welcome back, Andrew here with Ambient Endeavors, and if you enjoy geeking out about guitar gear, if you're interested in guitars and pedals and amps, or just want to learn more or know more about how to make your rig sound more like you want it to, explore new ways to pair effects or make different tones with your tools, I'd love it if you hit subscribe below and follow along with this channel. It's one of my favorite things to get to do, is make these videos and just kind of talk about gear, showcase new products, and explore ways that we can utilize them and find inspiration and motivation and creativity from them. So I appreciate you being here. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, do all the things so YouTube can kind of keep showing you guys my videos. I really appreciate it. Today we're talking about a brand new pedal from Origin Effects. It's actually been out for a few weeks, but they were kind enough to send this over, and I was really excited because I'm a huge fan of Bluesbreaker circuits. I've been through a number of them over the past handful of years, but it's kind of always been a staple in my drive section for a few different reasons. To me, there is the right amount of kind of mid-presence nudge. I've never been a huge fan of tube screamers because sometimes that frequency range can be too prominent or too pushed in those circuits. Conversely, a lot of the kind of transparent or scooped pedals to me don't pair very well with the primarily Fender amps I'm using nowadays, or can just kind of have the opposite syndrome where you lose so much of that mid-range that can be a real tool and benefit to your guitar tone. But to me, the Bluesbreaker just kind of sits in this really sweet spot where you can use it as an always-on kind of texture sparkle adder with a tone knob rolled up a little bit. You can crank it up and get some really nice saturation that fills out your tone while still being pretty dynamic and responsive to the way you play. And it kind of caps out at about the most gain I usually use 90% of the time. And so I don't miss out on not having more saturation and more gain and sort of a distortion type territory. It just really kind of is the foundational overdriven sound that I often go to. And so I was really excited to check out the Halcyon Blue here, Origin's newest in their line of Halcyon pedals that are kind of going back to some of these classic overdrive circuits. They've done one on the Tube Screamer, they've done the Klon, and now the Bluesbreaker here, and it's their own take on it with some of their unique kind of features and technology and approach. And so let's dive into it. So first off, as I'm just holding this pedal, and if you have played anything from Origin, you know that there's just a substance and a tangible kind of reminder of the quality and the heart and the engineering that goes into making their pedals. It's this rugged, solid, sturdy, heavy piece of metal enclosing the circuit inside here. These really cool brushed knobs, and I love the presentation that they deliver, and they've been so consistent with it across their lines. So they've really solidified themselves as players, specifically in the kind of studio gear turned guitar pedal, but now are kind of introducing these line of overdrive classics. I think it's a great addition to the conversation and to the landscape of gear here. So you have in the Halcyon Blue, you essentially have two different models of the Bluesbreaker. You have a mode in the voice toggle here that's pretty traditional and old school Bluesbreaker. It's labeled BB. And that gives you a more true to form Bluesbreaker. The way that the knobs kind of sound at different settings reminds me of the times I've had or played the old school Bluesbreaker, which kind of has its own quirks. And to me, it really has a fairly limited kind of sweet spot. But they've preserved that. It's not a direct one-to-one copy by any means, but kind of leans back into that classic feeling and sounding Bluesbreaker. We'll go over the knobs quick before we keep talking about that. You've got a level control up top, a drive control on the right here. You've got your tone control bottom right, and then you have this dry knob, which at noon sort of mimics the level of dry signal inclusion in the circuit as it pertains to that old Bluesbreaker circuit. If you dial it to the left, you are essentially removing some of that dry to give you a more just pure overdriven tone. As you dial that to the right here clockwise, you just introduce some more dry signal to your sound, which gives you a little more clarity and articulation that kind of helps to cut through that saturated sound, especially at higher gains. We'll explore that more in the demo, and you can kind of see and hear the subtle but I think useful ways you can use that dry control. Finally, the Halcyon Blue features this cool technology that Origin came up with and is kind of included on a number of their pedals now, their Adapt circuit. You have a toggle up top here which lets you select between one of three settings for that. You can select it to be off with the 0 or the far left position, or have two different options for varying degrees of adapt. And basically what that allows is, as your dynamics change, as you kind of clean up or play more lightly into the circuit, that mid boost prominence or that kind of mid push that this circuit will deliver will pull back and ease up a little bit, and you'll have a reintroduction of some of those bass frequencies and treble frequencies to kind of bring out the low end and some more clarity in the top end as you clean up your playing or clean up your volume knob on your guitar. And so it's a really cool adaptive way that the circuit responds to what it's seeing on the input and what you're playing and your dynamics and things to really give you this kind of dynamic experience in the frequency response of this pedal. So it's a really cool feature. We're going to demo it at the very end of the sound samples here to kind of get a feel for how it can do this give and take as you play lighter or heavier and dig in there. So that's about all I got. We're going to jump over to some sound samples with my Novo Miris J into the Halcyon Blue, onto a Strymon Flint for a little bit of reverb before we're getting into the Fender 60s Princeton non-reverb and the UA aux box. As I mentioned at the start of the video here, I'm going to try and showcase it with a little bit more sort of true to form sounds and phrasing and things that I would use a Bluesbreaker in. If you're interested in more of the kind of blues licks and riffs, definitely check out my buddy Blues. I was watching his demo in kind of preparation for this, and it just sounds fantastic. He's a monster player, and it definitely showcases it in a little more kind of expected context and scenarios with a Strat and kind of those like blues rock type scenarios. So hit his video if you want to hear that. Keep watching mine to hear some of my take on the Bluesbreaker here in the Halcyon Blue. Check it out.